Hey everyone, and welcome to the Sunny Go One Piece podcast. On this episode, we're going to be diving into episodes 619 through 621, which will cover manga chapters 693 through 695. And the largely absent Franky finally gets to flex his muscles, taking on Baby 5 and Buffalo. Alright, so synopsis. Caesar has now been defeated, but before he can be captured, Doflamingo has sent two of his officers to retrieve him, but the Iron Pirate General Franky steps up to take on the duel, while everyone else is on their way to escaping the collapsing lab facility. Okay, so differences. There are some decent amount of differences. So a small one to start off is there is an extra scene of the folks inside the lab facility trying to figure out what to do about whether they should wait or not, and inserted in between the Franky fight. There's also another scene in the control tower where Usopp gets the sea stone cups, but in the manga this scene is much shorter, where we just see a lone panel of the henchmen asking if they can join him in escaping, with Usopp saying sure, go ahead, but the anime has him receiving the cups from the henchmen and them all committing to not dying for Caesar. This scene, it just basically expands on what's kind of already implied, I guess. Now, during the minecart escape, there's an added scene where the Shinokuni gas is reintroduced as a threat, and Law asks if anyone can produce wind to clear the potential gas that's outside. The scene is kind of in the manga. The part where Law asks if anyone can produce wind and Nami responds yes, that is in the manga, but the idea that the gas is now after them is not. This scene also takes place directly after Law tells Smoker about swapping his and Monet's heart, whereas in the anime it takes place after Zoro slices the rock that falls in front of their path. There are some added scenes extending the Baby 5 and Buffalo versus Franky fight, particularly at the start of episode 621, where we see Baby 5 use the Fire Girl move to set him on fire. That move and that whole sequence is not in the manga. Instead, the next move we actually canonically see is the Sickle Girl, where she turns herself into a sickle and then stabs Franky's left arm, I believe it was. Then there's this really weird change in the anime that they make, and I may be misinterpreting the scene, but I have gone back several times to try and make sense of this, and I'm still not 100% sure what's going on. So both the anime and the manga have the side storyline where they need Nami to blow away the gas from the exit of the tunnel, like I mentioned earlier. But in the manga, because Buffalo blew all the gas away from that location, already there is no gas left, and they're all panicking for no reason, but obviously they don't know that. But in the anime, they decide to actually have the gas still be lingering there, and Nami actually does blow it away. The reason I'm confused about this is because I suppose this could still happen in the manga, but it's really understated, and it could have happened in between panels, but even then, it is not very apparent that Nami did anything like that. And the way the panels are laid out is that there are two panels. One where Usopp says something to the effect of, do something, Nami. And then we see a tiny panel at the end of the tunnel. Then immediately the next panel is all of them celebrating as the cart reaches outside. It is really bizarre, to be honest. I almost get the feeling that Oda just forgot to draw Nami doing something here, or ran out of time, or ran out of space. But at the same time, story-wise, it makes no sense because the gas should be gone by that point. So the anime kind of compromises by having this scene in there, but having like this sort of pocket of gas still inside, just like right before the exit of the tunnel that Nami blasts away. It's such a weird change. I don't know what to make of this one, to be honest. In any case, that's mostly all the significant changes, so let's get to the episodes themselves. So this set of episodes starts off the ground running with Franky just unleashing his arsenal of General Franky weapons on Baby 5 and Buffalo without any hesitation. And I have to say, this opening combat sequence looks amazing. Of course, Oda's writing and drawings for this sequence was cool, but I feel like Toei went a little extra for this fight sequence. I think the difference is in the way this scene is animated, and why it stands out is due to how they utilize sort of the smearing effect when animating all three characters' movements. It gives a sense of like really quick and powerful movement combined with some really exaggerated camera movements as well. And it's something that we typically don't get, since Toei has to save money and time. They rely heavily on static shots, and so we don't really get a lot of these. And I really feel like both Oda and the Toei staff kind of felt bad for Franky sidelining him for the entirety of the third act, which is why we got this crazy cool fight where Franky really gets to shine and we really get to see how capable the General Franky is. However, as much credit I give to Toei, the writers decide to cut this fight into pieces and give us an unnecessary scene of everyone inside debating what to do. However, in the manga, this fight is actually just one continuous scene for the most part. It does get broken up later, but they're like actual significant like cuts in the fight. The General Shield bit gets a chuckle out of me every time for how stupid it is. He puts the shield on after a barrage of attacks, and then now that he's got it on, he doesn't know what to do with it. And I love that bit of hesitation where you can tell he's thinking, and then just randomly decides to throw the shield like Captain America, all the while Baby 5 fully acknowledging just how stupid this all is. And during all this, back inside, Law is in a rush to leave, implying he wants to abandon anyone not there yet, but the Straw Hats are seated, waiting, believing that Chopper and the others will get there in time. The anime also adds the kids wanting to stay for Mocha, as well as Tashigi and Smoker also wanting to remain for their remaining men, and Momo is also worried about Kinemon as well. So the anime takes it one step further, making Law look really selfish by having everyone, not just the Straw Hats, willing to risk waiting. And I will say the anime has the ability to make this moment more tense and celebratory than the manga because of sort of the way that they're able to draw out the time with the music and sort of the tension that they can build. Whereas in the manga, this scene kind of just goes by really quickly. Then we get a showcase of what Baby 5 can do, and her fruit is pretty cool as she can seemingly turn into any weapon that she can think of. One of my first thoughts after seeing this fruit is just how Des Bonus's or Mr. One's Spuspa fruit is just an inferior version of this fruit. Like, he can only shapeshift his body into blades, but the Buki fruit or the weapon fruit or arms fruit, whatever the hell you want to call it, can not only do that, but she can become guns, projectiles, and even full-on explosives like missiles. And what's crazier still is that seemingly as long as the weapon she turns into is designed to explode, she can reform herself kind of like a Logia fruit. But I'm sure there are limitations to this for sure. But even with these amazing abilities, the General Franky is proving to be way stronger than even I had thought. When the time skip happened, I didn't really know what to expect from the suit, but I didn't think it would be that powerful, and this fight just shows how much stronger Franky has gotten. And the Straw Hats now have basically 2 people in the crew that potentially can handle like larger enemies like giants and other things of that size. Of course, the other crew member being the Monster Point Chopper to a lesser extent, but that's more so because obviously he's limited by the time of the Rumble Ball effects to 3 minutes. After we see the barrage of attacks showcasing Baby 5's fruit, the scene then moves to Caesar's point of view, realizing that he still has Smoker's heart, and as a last-ditch form of revenge, he commits to the idea of stabbing the heart and at least taking out Smoker with him. However, he made one small misconception. Later on, Baby 5 and Buffalo continue to bombard the General Franky with firepower from all sorts of weapons, yet Franky just tanks them all unharmed, which is kind of crazy seeing one of the Straw Hats being one of those indestructible opponents that usually they're on the receiving end of. It's a little surreal, to be honest. And they do eventually pierce his gauntlet, but that is when Franky decides to finish things with a new ultimate attack called the General Cannon and fires off a massive blast, similar, as he says, to the Gaon Cannon on the Sunny, which is essentially an upgraded form of the Coup event. Honestly, this whole Franky fight makes him look like a complete Giga Chad, and more than makes up for the neglect that Franky received up till now in this arc. This was honestly a really cool showing for Franky, and probably one of his coolest fights, to be honest. But going back to the Caesar thing, during this whole fight, we see a related scene playing out at the same time with Monet, as Doflamingo has Monet prepare to detonate the other island-destroying poison bomb that will wipe out anything and everyone on the island, including herself and Virgo. And this is another scene that I feel like Toei and the anime version does really well and even improves upon the manga. There's something really haunting about how willing and happy Monet is when Doflamingo asks her to die for him, essentially, which also happens to be the title of the chapter this episode is based on. Chapter 693 is titled Die For Me. And one change that I like is the lingering shot of Monet with her wings spread, bathed in light, as she savors her last moments before fulfilling her duty to her master. And you can later see this with Virgo too, as he kind of just smiles waiting for his death. It's then that it dawned on me that, to an extent, even those incredibly powerful and smart people can also fall prey to the same level of like cult-like following that Caesar's henchmen had fallen for. Now, at this moment, it's not clear if that really is the dynamic here or if Doflamingo truly values them as crewmates. It does seem like Doflamingo is pained to be losing both of them, but his plans are just still more important than the lives of his crewmates. At the very least, we know Luffy would never willingly let any of his nakama sacrifice themselves, and the crew knows this, which is why Zoro didn't want Luffy to know that what he did for him back on Thriller Bark with the nothing happened moment, and why Sanji, Brook, and Robin all also kept it a secret to this day. One last interesting thing we learn with Monet's last thoughts is that she wants to make Doflamingo the Pirate King. This was somewhat surprising to me at the time, as I didn't think Doflamingo was after the One Piece. To me, he always seemed more focused on his sort of black market dealings and controlling the underworld and causing chaos in the world, and a little bit of a sense of undermining the world government, even though he technically works for them. This revelation definitely changed the way I viewed Doflamingo from just another powerful villain to someone that actually had a much more significant meaning to his rivalry with Luffy as another captain that was after the One Piece to become the Pirate King. Which, yeah, I was genuinely like, huh, I didn't know this. This is interesting. Later on, there is an explosion, but not the island-destroying one that we thought was going to engulf everything, even though the anime wanted us to believe that. But Law tells us that it was the SAD factory that he destroyed earlier, and that Monet had failed to push the button because the heart that Caesar stabbed was not Smoker's heart, but in fact Monet's heart. Law had swapped the hearts, and he instead gave Caesar back Monet's heart and kept Smoker's heart earlier, much earlier in Act 2. And this is yet another clue that Law, in fact, pretty much is a good guy just trying to put on a tough act. He stole Smoker's heart to knock him out of the fight, but didn't want to go as far as to put him in real danger by handing the heart over to Caesar. With Monet dead and unable to push the button, this really makes Doflamingo desperate, and he decides to beeline it to Punk Hazard by himself, and he's seen essentially jumping through the sky somehow. I can't really remember at the time how people interpreted this, but because I had essentially predicted Doflamingo's route basically all the way back in his first appearance, I pretty much knew how he was doing this, or at the very least had a very good idea. One thing about this moment that the anime I don't think quite captured was just how freaking scary Doflamingo looked in the manga. So this final panel of chapter 694 is insane. You can just tell he's angry, but still manage to carry that air of menacing control. Like he's pissed and you're terrified of him, with that creepy grin like he's excited that he's going to get to kill people. I remember reading this chapter back in the day and thinking, oh shit, are they going to have to fight Doflamingo right after this? It certainly got everyone hyped. Either way, the things were really being set up to clash between Luffy and Dofi. And that was pretty inevitable. Whether it was going to happen in Punk Hazard or in the next arc, it definitely was coming. And something I can't emphasize enough is that you don't get in the anime is that feeling of Doflamingo's bloodlust jumping out of the page. Like, if you ever get a chance, go to the last page of 694 and compare how Doflamingo looks in the last two pages to what he looks like in the anime, because it's night and day. Like, the way Oda draws Doflamingo here is truly terrifying. Everyone eventually makes it out of the tunnel and are treated to the sight of General Franky standing tall and victorious over Baby 5 and Buffalo. And this is where the running gag of any man/boy in the One Piece universe goes bonkers over robots and every woman/girl is completely uninterested in them. This gag is on full display, with Tashigi even getting a chance to blankly stare alongside Nami and Robin and the little girls. It's a truly funny gag where, yeah, the guys always go crazy over robots and lasers, and the girls are completely unfazed by it. And this is also the point where Law comes face to face with Baby 5 and Buffalo, who all know each other as they were once crewmates, and he says something interesting. Buffalo mentions that Joker is still saving the heart seat for Law. Now, we don't know what that means yet. It's clear from context that there's a position still left open in Doflamingo's crew that was meant for Law. But yeah, this is a detail that you should file away for the future, and I'll go into this a little bit in the spoilers section as well. Baby Five and Buffalo, seeing that they're vastly outnumbered, grab Caesar and attempt to run, which Law begins to use his powers to get them back, when Usopp and Nami step forward to triumphantly get them back, which is a really cool moment in regards to the Straw Hats, as Usopp and Nami really get to flex their skills, with Luffy and Zoro championing their confidence in them. And all of this is really cool and I love it, but at the same time, you could argue that it would have been a lot easier just having Law use his room ability and shambles them back. It seems unnecessarily risky to rely on sniping them out of the sky. The only real argument I could see for preferring Usopp and Nami over Law in this situation is that Usopp actually had the Sea Stone cuffs, which is a surefire way to capture Caesar, but it's already established that Caesar is basically incapacitated and can't run away anyways. You could argue the real reason the scene is the way it is to show Law that despite how unpredictable and unorthodox the way Luffy and the Straw Hats do things, they can be relied on to complete the overall objective, even if it takes many unnecessary turns to get there. And Luffy, while he may be unserious, unpredictable, and selfish at times, always doing things his way without much regard for the thought of others, he still does follow through on what he says he's going to do, even if the journey of getting there isn't what anyone had expected. And it's at this point Law truly sees what kind of alliance he's really gotten himself into with the Straw Hats. He's not fully convinced yet, I think, but he seems to be coming around to the idea that working with them is going to be annoying, but they are very capable and useful. In any case, they do capture Caesar, and all is good for now until Doflamingo eventually gets there. The last twist, though, that's revealed in this episode is that Kuzan is mysteriously headed to Punk Hazard for some reason. So now we've got two wild cards, heavy hitters as well on their way to Punk Hazard. Most likely, Kuzan will be the equalizer against Doflamingo, as he will definitely side with our heroes, as he's technically not a Marine anymore. So he may, he probably still has a soft spot for the Straw Hats, and we already know he's friends with Smoker. So this at least answers how they're going to maybe survive Doflamingo for the time being. That doesn't make this revelation any less exciting, as we haven't properly seen Kuzan since he left the Marines in the time skip, and we don't really know what he's been doing or what his motivations are now, so it'll be cool to perhaps find out some of those answers potentially when he does arrive. But yeah, I know this is a shorter episode, but if you did enjoy this, send me a like or comment, and if you want to join me on this journey of rewatching One Piece, please consider subscribing. Check out my Instagram account at SunnyGo Podcast for updates when I post new episodes, and see some pictures of my manga collection and One Piece card collection. And yeah, as always, just listening to the podcast is enough for me, but if you feel like supporting me extra, you can always check out my Buy Me a Coffee profile. But of course, that's not necessary at all. And yeah, you can just support me in any way you like. And as always, thanks for taking the time out to listen to my podcast. Like I mentioned, there will be a small spoiler section talking about a couple things. But if you're not interested in those, stay safe out there. And I hope to see you on the next episode. Bye. All right, spoiler section. Just two really small things that I wanted to mention that were kind of apparent in this episode. The first is when Momo, or Momonosuke, finds out that Kinemon is potentially dead from being encased in that poison gas, whatever. In his panic, Momo actually calls him Kinemon instead of Chichiue, or father. And this is kind of your first clue that maybe Momonosuke isn't Kinemon's actual son. And this is something I never noticed until this rewatch. And yeah, it is interesting because, of course, if you were actually father and son, especially a child as young as 8 years old as Momonosuke is at this point, yeah, why would he say Kinemon? Why would he call his father by his first name like that? But I think because he was in such a panic that he had died, that he let it slip and just called him Kinemon, because obviously that's what he's always called him. The other thing I wanted to kind of mention too in the spoiler section is, of course, the comment about Buffalo and Baby Five telling Law that Joker, or Doflamingo, is still saving the heart seat for Law. And now, of course, this used to belong to his mentor, Corazon, or Roshinante, and that seat was vacated because Doflamingo basically killed him in front of Law, no less. And it's kind of cruel when you think about it that he would be willing to give Law that spot after everything that happened. Because Doflamingo, I think by this point, knows his betrayal and what happened between Law. I have to go back and see what he actually knew at this point. But yeah, I think that seems like a really cruel thing to give him his old mentors and savior's spot in the crew, in a crew that he absolutely detests too, which I find really interesting. That it seems like Baby Five and Buffalo talk about it as if it's some sort of an honor, but to Law, like, that's probably one of the cruelest things that Doflamingo could have possibly offered him, and I think Doflamingo knew that, which is why he was willing to give Law that spot. And why he kept it open all this time is just to torture Law, really. Of course, it's been a while since I've rewatched Dressrosa, so I may be forgetting a few details. So I may have forgotten a few things later on that is revealed about that. So yeah, we'll get to that when we get to Dressrosa in the next arc. But anyways, thanks for listening, and I will see you on the next episode. Bye.